Okay, we did it. And now we can officially begin. Good evening and welcome to the first in our new Voices for Change screening and discussion by Women Voices Now. I am your host for this evening. My name is Chelsea Byers. I'm incredibly proud to serve as the programs director for Women Voices Now. We're a nonprofit organization that supports films by women, about women, and for everyone, because we believe in the power of amplifying women's voices through film to advance women's rights around the globe. Yes, for us, we love to watch films that make us want to do something and then go out and do it. The series is one of many programs at Women's Voices Now that could not happen without the support of our community. Some of you may be here tonight because you're already a part of this community that helps make things possible. Our board, our staff, our volunteers, our crew members, our donors, all of you, we thank you all so much. If you're a regular at our program or somebody who's brand new to it, thank you for showing up tonight. We're going to give everyone a chance to show your support, show your commitment to this organization and to this work. I'll be dropping a link into the chat in just a moment. If you're willing to make a contribution tonight, we welcome you to do so and are so grateful for you to do so. This sort of work does not just happen. It truly happens because people believe in it. And we hope, if anything, you leave tonight a believer. So thanks for hanging with us for this program. And speaking of ongoing programming, there's going to be so much more after the film and discussion tonight. We'll share more events that were happening throughout the calendar year for Women Voices Now, specifically in this Voices for Change series. You'll hear what's next. And at the end of this program, you'll also earn yourself a 50% off code for our film festival. The film festival starts March 1st and runs online the entire Women's History Month in March. It's our 9th festival, holding ground under siege. It's going to feature a remarkable series of women's rights struggles from around the globe, and we hope you'll be there to help us kick it off on March 1st and join us for the many events happening all month long. The festival is just one of many ways that we fuel and grow our Voices for Change film collection, which is what is bringing us all together tonight. Over the years, we've worked in partnership with organizations and communities to host discussions about the films in the collection alongside the filmmakers around various themes or issues happening around the world. This program is the evolution of those external programs and our own internal Voices for Change podcast series hosted by our own Women's Voices for Now comms director, Yasmeen Al-Shawwa, who will be leading the discussion tonight. We're really excited to be joined by the filmmaker and a producer and star of the film that you'll see shortly. I wanted to just give a few other shout outs. I saw that our executive director is in the room, Heidi. I just wanted to give you a shout out because nothing is possible without you, and we're really grateful to you. I saw a jury member who is a part of our film festival into the room, and it's really exciting to see people from that part of our community here. A speaker from our Girls Voices Now summer program, Oni, just thank you so much. I'm sure I'm missing other people, but wanted to also just shout out somebody who I really respect and admire, my colleague on the West Hollywood City Council, and he's the mayor pro tem of the city of West Hollywood and a director of Planned Parenthood. And given the topic of the film, I just thought it was worth a shout out to know that the folks who are seeing this are able to take this back to community and bring these voices into new places. So with that, I want to introduce the film and then just get it started. It's going to be a great discussion. This Is Not a Love Letter is a video poem that celebrates resilience and community as one woman tells the story of her abortion for the first time. The film travels in real time through the raw and heartfelt reactions from her circle of friends. You will watch This Is Not a Love Letter, and then you'll join Yasmeen, Ariel, and Isabel for a conversation after the film. Thank you all once again for being here. Take a peek in the chat for some resources that'll be coming your way and some requests for your support. I hope you all very much join the program and come back for many more.
This is not a love letter, and I have written many.
At least it is not a love letter to any particular body that I once turned into a landing place for I love you. That it is not. I can tell you a story of a room standing still, a doctor with a degree spewing statistical improbabilities. But I don't understand. But I had an IUD. How my boyfriend picked me up in a Honda CRV. How we tried to get frozen yogurt. Keep the protesters away. How I came armed against them anyway. My mother and the boy who used to love me at my side. How inside a handful of women sat quiet, escorted to a holding room alone. How you're made to do this on your own. A loop of Kardashians on a television, hours of waiting, a toddler complaining. How the woman with the cross on her neck prepped an IV on wheels, asked me just how much I wanted to feel, how I answered nothing at all, how it didn't feel real. Dear God, do you hate me? Please, please, just sedate me. And maybe I'm afraid to tell this story because it is unfamiliar territory. Afraid I won't tell it right, how my heart felt tight, how so many mornings after I could not find a light. Afraid that to touch the memory of that morning is to invite in the masses who claim they know more than me. Maybe I'm afraid of being seen, of being heard. Maybe I'm afraid for the women who won't see themselves in my words. I am sick of the justification, the drawn-out explanations, the expectation to make excuses so everyone understands. I always was safe, always played by the rules, always wanted to believe this wasn't the choice I'd choose. But no one should be allowed to tell me how I'm supposed to feel, to walk for a mile in my own damn shoes, and then to see it on the news. I didn't talk to God for a month straight. But when I did, I found he was never ashamed. And I have no obligation to tell this story, but it is not told enough. And the road has been rough, but I have had to learn what tough is. And I want to be brave, and I want to take up space, and I want to be enraged. I want to say that 1 in 4 US women by the age of 45 live their everyday lives, some of them carrying memories they've been taught they need to hide. How despite it all, they learn to thrive. Please understand me when I say the act of choosing is indispensable. That for me to imagine a lack thereof is incomprehensible. That this choosing continues to strengthen my elasticity, my tenacity, that I have had to learn how to bounce back and back and back, to become so familiar with my own shape that I can return to it when I'm stretched beyond what I thought I could take. This is resilience. I will tell a story of resilience over and over, for myself, for my mother, for my little sister, for the women in my life, the warriors, the resistors, who wake up with mouths that sing and bones that dance, whose choice to live boldly is not simply by chance. I will learn how to write a love letter to myself in the nothing night, to no body at all, to 4 walls, to empty space. I will learn how to write it until my own body becomes the landing place. For I love you. we'll invite our filmmaker and our communications director and producer to the stage. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. My name is Yasmeen Al-Shawwa. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. If you're rewatching this, welcome. I'm so excited to facilitate this discussion with the incredible filmmakers. I'm lucky to have one of them in person with me, Ariel.
Hi.
And we have Isabel joining us from New York City, 3 hours ahead of us in the Pacific Standard Time. And we'll just get started. How are you this evening, first of all?
Good. I feel like I'm less tired than you, Isa.
You know, I'm excited to be here. It's kind of wild to watch the film after having been a little while every time, but so wonderful. So yeah, it's really nice to be here.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And how was it watching your film again on the screen tonight for Women's Voices Now?
Yeah, I mean, like Isabel said, it's kind of weird to watch it again because I haven't like sat down and watched it in quite a while. And also I feel like when you've like edited something to pieces, like you don't really watch it that many times afterwards. And so to watch it again, I was like, oh yeah, I love that shot. Oh, right. Like we really did that. Like it was kind of coming back. So yeah.
There's also just like so many like, it's just such a warm film because it is such like they're all people we know and people we love. And so even if I'm like not really in a place where I'm like, I want to watch my own self or my own words or something, it's just like, it's very sweet and beautiful to see all of these people together in this space. It always makes me smile.
I asked that because I'm sure you know, of course, you watched it a million more times than I have because you edited the film, right?
Yeah.
But I watched it at least half a dozen times in this week preparing for the screening. And even as I watched it again, I'm like, ooh, and I noticed like something different. And I'm like, I have a question about that. So it's always a good question to lead with. So I want to start off by asking how we got this film on the screen. So the beginning process of, first of all, choosing what to create the film about and coming forward with this poem. Was the poem written first? Was the idea about making this sort of film, did that come first? What came first and what was your process as filmmakers, both of you?
Yeah, I'll jump in here and I'll say that C&T Productions, which is the company that Ariel co-founded with our friend Daryl. We all went to college together and they were doing a series called Open, which is a spoken word series. So there's 2 other poems in the series that are really amazing that you can check out on YouTube. And they knew that I had written some poetry and done some spoken word. And so they said, you know, we'd love for you to create kind of a poem for this series. What would you be interested in doing? And I thought about it for a while, and it was not too long, probably like a year-ish after I had had an abortion and gone through this, and I wasn't sure if it was something I wanted to talk about. And I went back and forth on it a lot and kind of wrote a poem initially and shared it with my sister, and she was like, yeah, like it's pretty good. She was like, but I feel like you can, you know, do something different with it if you want to. So I wrote another poem, and yeah, there was a little bit of back and forth about being like, is this something I want to do? But I feel really lucky that Ariel and Daryl are friends and people that I trust and care about, and I wouldn't have done that with just anybody, honestly. And I had kind of an idea, like I wanted to be this intimate thing. There was some dance in the other pieces, so we were like, okay, I want this to be an intimate conversation. I was like, I think it's in my apartment. I think it's with people I love. And Ariel was able to take that and build on that to kind of create something that existed more than I could have imagined, which ended up in the final result of the film. So that's kind of the journey of it.
Yeah. And I would also add that I feel like the film also kind of found itself in post a little bit, like because we worked with this really cool documentary filmmaker who was the director of photography for this, Caitlin Rebello. she has really cool work. You should check it out. And we shot a lot of stuff over 2 days. And then in post, we're like, okay, what can we use? How do we find the balance between the intimacy of Isabel's apartment and the more abstract stuff? And how do we like make this a realistic journey from, you know, we're not just hitting you over the head with it, but we're making sure you're compelled to finish it. So yeah, we kind of found it in post too. I felt like this film, like I didn't know what it was going to look like when we were shooting it. It was like, we're just going to get stuff and see what happens.
For sure.
Beautiful to go into that process, right? I feel like when we watch films, sometimes like in our unconscious or subconscious, we're like, how did that happen? And like, who? And then we forget about it because we're like continuing watching the film, right? So I always like to go into those questions.
Yeah.
And Isabel, for you, I really want to know your process of deciding to share the story. It's such a personal, intimate story. Was there ever a moment where you're like, ooh, I think I'm going to back out on this. Ooh, maybe this is a little too much to share. Did you ever go through that process, or was it streamlined, sort of like, I know I want to share this?
No, definitely. I think that, you know, I grew up in Texas. I grew up in a fairly like religious environment. I grew up in a place that like it was never talked about. I think as I had my own experience, I started to kind of like open my eyes a little bit to so many people around me who had also had this experience. And I was like, oh my God, there's this, like, nobody's talking about this at all. And if I were able to hear someone else's experience more so, or talk about it, then I would definitely feel less alone in it. And there's complicated feelings that come up with it, you know, and everybody has a different experience with abortion. I think that I was really scared. I was scared of like what my community would think, what some of my family would think. And ultimately it felt like there would just be a lot more regret in not doing that than in doing it. Like, I'm like, okay, if I put this out there and a couple of people are upset or are judging me for it, then, you know, there's so much more to be gained than there is to be lost, I guess. And so Ariel and Daryl were really helpful in not like pushing me to do it. And we're very much like, it's your decision, but also being like, you know, I think we could do something really cool. And then ultimately, like, by sharing those things, it makes them so much lighter. It makes it so much easier to talk about. Like, I'm sitting here right now, and that was, you know, a few years ago. And I'm like, I'll talk about, you know, that experience. I'll talk about abortion. I'll talk about this film really easily and without like stigma or shame around it, and be able to talk about it. So I really think that the more we talk about these things, then the easier it is, and the easier it is to kind of fight for rights and things to move forward.
Absolutely. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into that in just a second. Before we do that, another good question. But I want to ask also about some technical things on screen that we saw, right? So a few things that really caught my eye, which was the zooming into the faces of the other women, the tears, just like the expressions of other women as they were, if they were saying the poem or if they were just watching. And I think the ones that impacted me the most were the ones that weren't saying anything, just like the tears. And also kudos to like, wow, I love the diversity and, you know, the different women and the ages that we saw. It wasn't just young women, it was older women, and I loved it. But my question is, how did you decide to feature that? Was that like a post decision? Was it like you envisioned like the zooming in on those faces?
No, those faces were a big part of the original vision for it.
Okay.
So essentially what was really cool and different about this process is that Isabel had a huge part in gathering the people that were going to be listening to this story. Like, this was basically like anybody that Isabel was comfortable with in the room in that time. That's like those were the only people who were really invited. And a lot of them heard the poem for the first time in that room, in that space. So with those individual scenes, what we asked them to do was step outside of the room, read the poem on their own, and find the lines that impacted them the most, and then come back into the room, and I would just ask them to read it or to repeat it, because they're all really talented actors and could memorize things really quickly. So they went ahead and said whichever line impacted them the most, and I would just ask them to repeat it a few times, and usually by the third time that would create the emotion that we were looking for, and can't be performed. Like, it's just genuine. It was the main thing that I think we all knew was going to be in the piece, was like, okay, Isabel's going to say it in like a close-up and a master wide, and then more and more people are going to be in the room, and they're going to start to take the words on themselves. Like, that's what we knew. But as far as like, how are the really cool women in red and the pomegranate shots and the dancing, how's that, like the stairway, how's that going to work in? And I was like, I don't know, we're going to shoot it, let's find out. Like, that was definitely like a question, but those close-ups in particular was a big part of the original vision for this piece.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And really quick, we were talking off screen about the pomegranate. Just give us a few. She said there's many significant, things that the pomegranate represents.
Yeah, there's a few things that the pomegranate represents. I mean, for one, I think it's about planting a seed. Like, we know that we can't change people's minds with a lot of this kind of stuff, where they feel very deeply rooted in their certainty of what's right and wrong, but we can plant a seed and hope that that will grow into a deeper understanding of this, because I truly believe that people, if they're put in these situations, would react the same way. And then there's the significance of, the pomegranate with Persephone, and how she ate like some seeds and then was trapped basically. And like, what does the seed represent? And then of course, there's also, the idea of, in Judaism, particularly Persian Jews believe that it wasn't an apple that Eve ate, it was a pomegranate. So there's a bit of that to it, but ultimately, the day of the shoot, I was at Costco buying, and I stole a pomegranate and put it in, and I was like, we need to use this, and it ended up a lot more in the film than I thought it was going to.
It really gave it texture.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, I've got a pomegranate necklace on right now, actually. So I'm like, yeah, always, like, they pop up in my life in so many ways. So it's been, it's just fun.
Isabel did a piece about, like, it had pomegranates in it, like when we were in college, like she had done a piece within, like, so it kind of was like
comes back through in so many ways. Yeah, I just also love the image of it. Like, it feels like a heart breaking open, like a bloody kind of, like, there's also, it's very like visceral of a feeling. So it's exciting to have it in there. And like, it was like break open.
Yeah, I was like, do you remember what that was like? Like when Caitlin was like right up in your face, and you were just,
you only have one that's just like, let's just break it open, and then like everybody started eating the seeds from it, and then like that wasn't initially planned, but then we're like, okay, that's awesome, like of course everybody should share in this thing, and that was really fun.
I challenge anybody watching this to break a pomegranate open with your hands, and then you'll realize how hard that is and be like, oh, Isabel did a really good job, because it's actually very difficult to break a pomegranate open like that. So,
but fun, a good time.
Don't wear white.
Don't wear white. Unless you're making a statement.
Unless that's another movie. Yeah. Okay, so Isabel, in your poem, you say the words, I want to be enraged, right? And then you follow by saying how women are, they hold on to and they hide these stories, especially the ones that we're supposed to feel ashamed about most, right? And you give a statistic. Can you talk to us more about that? I want to be enraged, and also tell us in your words what you feel the power of telling a personal story is. Yeah,
no, I think that for me, like rage is something that I don't allow myself to really go into that often. And then to have, I don't know, to have an experience that you feel is really personal, that then is so politicized and people have opinions on all over the place is like really frustrating, and can make it feel really dehumanizing when it's this experience that it's like, okay, I get to make a choice about my life that might have to do with my health, that might have to do with my dreams, what I want for my life, that could have all sorts of a number of things, and to have it feel like it's so controlled, so judged, when you're yourself trying to figure out your own feelings about it anyways, it's like it's really frustrating, and it's really upsetting. And I think that I hadn't let myself feel that kind of anger. And I think when we allow ourselves, like, whatever full spectrum emotion that is, like, healing happens in certain ways too. So I think like rage was really important to me, rage, and then also joy. It was like Ariel and I were like, okay, we never want this to be a really downer movie. Like, we don't want it to be like depressing and sad. Like, there's so much joy in sharing stories. And so I guess in answer to your second question of like the power of sharing stories, I think that yeah, and just like Ariel said, I did that poem to like most of my best friends at different points, and there were very real reactions. Maybe some of them knew it happened, but to be able to fully explain it in this way through a different medium than just conversation was very, I don't know, it was very special and it was very healing. And I think that when we're able to use art to tell our stories like that, it like gives us a different way in. And I'm really, really grateful for that. And I think that the more we do that, like the more nuanced our conversations can become, and you're able to be like, hey, I know someone that this happened to. Like, you know, I use that statistic 1 in 4 women, which is true, but it's also like, you may not know that. Like, people, I've had family members or whoever are like, no, I never know anybody who's had an abortion. Like, I guarantee you, you know, a lot of people who have, no matter where you live, no matter what is going on. And to be able to have a personal experience of that makes you think about it a little bit differently, because you're like, oh, my aunt or my cousin or my friend or my sister, someone had this experience. And that goes like beyond abortion to all sorts of different issues, like, you know, I don't know, all across the board. If you know someone and it becomes personal, like the more empathy we're able to grow from that as well.
I would also add to that I think what you're saying about the power of the storytelling is absolutely right, and that everybody thinks that they don't know somebody that has had this when they do. But I also think that that contributes to the loneliness that a lot of people feel in sharing this story. And it's like, because Isabel was honestly brave enough to share this very personal and often politicized experience, it was like more people felt safe in sharing their story because of this. And the camera was rolling the entire time. We also had moments where, you know, we were just sharing the story together with just the people in the room. I remember my mom, who was in the film and doing Crafty and is also here. Hi, Mom.
Yeah,
Hi to all the moms.
yes.
She shared the story of her abortion, which she got like the year that it was legalized in New York in 1971, I think it was. And she shared that story with a group of women, and she had only shared that story with like 2 people before. And I had never heard that level of detail from her. And she felt safe enough to actually share that story in that room because of what Isabel had done in that space of opening up the stage for that kind of storytelling. And I found that to be absolutely beautiful, that we could all kind of take the weight of that on together. And it wasn't just so isolating of like one person has experienced this and we're all like, oh my God, that's really hard. But it's like all of us have that, and it's less isolating because of that.
I definitely think that you did a good job with the it was like there, I felt like I saw an alchemy of like this, like there was like the tears, and then especially towards the end there was like, you know, the laughter and like the circle of like laughing, and like there was like very like moments that still stick out in my mind from the film. So I feel like you did a really good job of like
And it
showing
was
all of our story, like in the film and out in and the audience watching it, and also like this alchemy of like, as we share it and we take it on as all of ours, there's this alchemy that happens of joy and like community that can come out of it.
Thank you.
definitely. And like we got so much responses from it, which was crazy too. So it's like not even in that room, it was like it went to like hundreds of thousands of people, which is like nuts. And then we started hearing from people all over the world who were like, oh my gosh, I've never told anybody this, but this made me want to talk to my mom, or this made me want to talk to my sister, or like, this. And so that was really cool too, to be like, okay, like, yeah, it can be, because we give each other the space to make these things happen, people feel more comfortable to talk about things they wouldn't otherwise.
Like, look at the comments in the YouTube video, because we just posted this on YouTube because we wanted people to be able to see it. Look at the comments. Like, it is surprisingly not negative. Like, I've never seen a story related to abortion that like a bunch of trolls haven't gotten, into. Like, if you read through these comments, it's people very genuinely talking about their own experiences, sharing their stories and the impact it had for them. So it's like, I don't know, the like social media had some good effects in the storytelling of this.
It can, if we use it as that tool, it can. Unfortunately, there's other side of it, but yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. That's so good to hear.
I know.
I love that little side story. And I'm gonna ask my last question before we take questions from the audience. So if you have questions watching this right now, get them ready. We'll be calling on you next. But for the month of February, which is, usually the month of love and Valentine's Day, I like to say it's the month of self-love because it's the original love, right? I want to talk about love as a choice, right? Our choice as an act of self-love. With everything that happened last year with Roe versus Wade, this subject has come very much online again in the biggest ways. And I wanted to ask you both what you want to say about choice and telling your stories as a form of love and self-love.
Should I start? What do you think, Issa?
Go ahead if you've got something.
I think that the thing about this is that like we thought we were safe in this. Like, we thought, I don't know, I just grew up with my mom kind of, telling me that Roe v. Wade was a protection and that was never going away. And I think that as we've watched that start to roll back, it's awoken a new generation of our insistence in our right to choose. And I think that like, because we've been challenged now, I think more than ever, people are digging in their heels and saying, no, like we will, we're not going to let the government decide or anybody decide what we have to do with our bodies, because at the end of the day, it's our choice. And I have had conversations, because I'm from Georgia, Isabel's from Texas. We've talked a lot about this. Like I've had conversations with people who are pro-life, and generally, once we get into the actual conversation about choice, then their tune starts to change, because it's like, I could never do that with my body. And then I'm like, okay, well, you don't have to, that's your choice. You don't have to do that. I'm going to do what I want to do with my body. You can't decide that for me. And then they're like, yeah, true. And I'm like, okay, so you're pro-choice. And then they like, look at me like that's like, you tricked me. And I'm like, that's how simple it is. And I really, that's like what I ultimately think that this all comes down to, is like people misunderstanding how simple it really is. Just like, this is your choice and it's no one else's, and no one's going to take that from us. Even if we all have to align and do what we need to do to get our protections back. Yeah.
I love the idea of choice is love. And I think it's also just about giving people the grace to make their choices and not know what you would do. Like, I mean, before like I had an abortion or talked about it or anything, like I wasn't sure what I would do if I had an abortion. I think there was a time in my life where I was like, no, that I probably wouldn't, like, but I support that for other people. And like when it comes down to it, various things play into your choice in a moment. To be able to have that choice is so valuable, and it is like an act of love to give yourself a choice of something, and then like to allow other people to have a choice in things, whether it's like, I mean, even in small things, right? Like just giving people the freedom to choose, I think is a really loving thing.
Yeah, and also to come back to what you're saying about self-love, I think that what was so powerful about Isabel's writing in this, and I think where the film came out to be, is that every abortion film that I've seen shows it as a very sad thing, and it is. It's a very difficult conversation and a difficult choice. But there is a lot of beauty in choosing your own life and the path that you have set out for yourself. And you are not only allowed, but encouraged to love yourself and your body, given what you've been through. And I love how much love is in this film. Like, I really do. There's like, you don't see that a lot. Like, it's like we're, as uterus havers, not supposed to love our bodies at all, let alone if we've had to make a choice like this. And this film is like, yeah, fuck that. I know it's called This Is Not a Love Letter, but like, spoiler alert, it's a love letter.
I love that so much. Thank you for saying that. That's very beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, and we have the audience agreeing. Okay, so we actually want to take some questions if you have any before we close it out for the night.
Folks are welcome to raise their hand, unmute yourself. If you want to even turn your video on to interface with the filmmaker, that's totally fine. We'll take the quick questions for a few minutes. I see Vivian popping on. Go ahead, Vivian.
Oh, hello. Oh, thank you so much for this beautiful film. I really enjoyed it. And this was just a wonderful surprise. And, just before this viewing, I was reading something about the power of voiceover narration. And it's so interesting that I was just reading that and how it can become dominating and like controlling history and narratives and things like that. And I was so struck in your film about having all the different actresses and participants speak parts of the poetry. And I loved how, your one voice didn't dominate the story, and it became, as you were saying, the sharing of the burden and the sharing of the storytelling. So I was just really impacted by that, and I appreciated that technique. So thank you so much for this beautiful project.
Oh,
Thank you.
that's so sweet. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Does anyone else have a question or a comment they'd like to share before we wrap? And I'm also, while folks are maybe gathering a question that they have, I want to drop the link to the film for those who maybe joined us just after we watched it. I know it goes by very quick. Those 5 minutes are really impactful and they move quickly. So I'll drop the link to the film on our website. And if anyone else would like to raise their hand or unmute themselves.
We got one in the comments, which was what you're working on next.
Ooh. Awesome. Lots of things in the works. Isabel and I don't have anything collaborating on in the works right now, but I know we're both doing a lot of shit. I've got a really fun queer comedy web series that I'm editing right now, or we're in post for. I directed it a couple weeks ago, called Day by Day, BI, because it's a bunch of queer people. That's us. And we'll be launching our crowdfunding campaign in, I guess, a few days. So you can definitely follow up with that on socials. And that's what I'm working on. Isa, what are you doing? What are you building on?
I'm an actress also, as well as a writer. So I'm working on shooting an independent film that I'm acting in that is kind of a medieval piece. It's about Julian of Norwich, and that's this month. And then I'm also in post for a short that I wrote and acted in that'll hopefully, be released later this year, and fingers crossed and all goes well, will maybe develop into a feature. So those are the kind of the writing things that I'm working on. Yeah. And then I'm on a it happens, I came right from this to here. If anybody is into Dungeons and Dragons, I'm on a D&D podcast that plays live every Thursday. So I just came from that, and it's a really good time.
Dungeons and Dragons. I'm joining a Dungeons and Dragons campaign on Sunday. I'm so excited. I picked
It's the absolute best. We do like audience participation. It's live. It's really fun. It's called Please Don't Kill Us.
That's so great. And then this film is going to be screening on Monday. The Bellwether Project in New York City is doing essentially an event to raise money for abortion funds. And this film will be part of that, as well as a bunch of other really incredible work from friends. So you can always donate to that as well. So yeah, it's like, that's what we're working on. And then that's what's next for the film.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And I want to expand on that. So Women's Voices Now, we always say we love to move people from empathy to action. So my last question, if no one else has any other questions, going once, going twice, audience.
I think we're good.
Okay, cool. So we always say we love to move people from empathy to action. So my question for both of you is, what kind of action would you like this film to ignite from the audience?
For me, it's always been, I want you to watch this film and then go write a love letter to your own body. That's what I want you to do when you watch this. And that can look whatever way it needs to look. Not all of us have the talent with words that Isabel has, but you can still write a love letter just to yourself and to your own body. It has massive impact, I think, and you can feel the weight that carries, and kind of some of the trauma that we carry in our bodies can be liberated through that process. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
And then make a film about it and send it to us.
Yes. And there's concrete actions if you're, if you want to learn more about it, if maybe somebody in your life who has had an abortion and you want to ask them about it, and you have that kind of relationship and want to open up a conversation, I think that's a great place to start. If you've had an abortion and you don't feel comfortable talking about it and you want to talk about people, I think that's awesome, and I'm sure there are people who want to share that. You can also, for a long time, escorted at Planned Parenthood. I think that's a really actionable thing you can do. Basically, in any city, they need escorts, which basically you just kind of hang out outside the clinic and you walk people into the clinic amidst protesters. And in New York, they definitely have a big protester presence, and in most big cities, honestly. And it just helps to see some familiar faces out there. So I encourage anybody to look into that. It's easy, and there's community building involved. So there's some concrete ways to hop in there.
Thank you for that awareness.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that we would like to announce about this film moving forward, or any other actions?
Well, I would say make sure to follow us on socials, because I know that we're very aligned in that we care about socially charged content. So if you like stories like this, we're always creating more content like this.
Both. What's your handle?
I'm at Ariel Zucker, and the production company that Daryl and I run is called I'm a Real CNT Productions. If you're wondering what CNT stands for, all that's missing is you. And you can follow it on Twitter and Instagram. And we have a Patreon too, patreon.com/CNT Productions.
Beautiful. And yours, Isabel, would you like to?
Yes, I'm at IPASK, IPASK.
Okay, perfect. All right, wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I'm going to give the mic back to Chelsea to close us out for the night.
Thank you. Thanks again. Just a round of applause. I know it's funny when we're in these Zooms, but I'm screaming behind the scenes. This was so moving, so amazing. the way film comes to life when you're having conversations like this, it's so powerful. Really glad that we're going to be doing more of this. So thank you all for helping us kick off this series. I mentioned to everybody, we'll be doing our next Voices for Change film events, our screening and discussion May 24th. It's going to be a really amazing event focused on menstruation, poverty, period poverty. We're going to be screening a film from our collection, collaborating with an organization. It'll be an amazing panel, and we'll be sending out more information soon, but save the date. I'm going to also drop, as promised, a link for you to get tickets. You're going to be among the very first to get tickets to our film festival. We're so excited. March 1st, this kicks off. I'm also going to be sharing a 50% off code so you can get a discounted ticket to that festival. What you also have seen dropped into the chat is a survey link. Please give us feedback, how you like this event, what we can do to better shape this. We know the film flew by really quickly at the top of the program, so we're going to send a follow-up email with the link to the survey, a link to the film, as well as some of the calls to action that the filmmakers made today. We want to make sure that you know how to support them financially, how to stick with them in their ongoing projects. So you'll get all the information via email as well. And then the last thing, if you are able to, we'd love for you to support Women Voices Now in an ongoing fashion. You can become a donor, become a crew member. As a member of the crew, you get free tickets to support or to be a part of these events in an ongoing way. It's one of the kickbacks for that reoccurring giving program. So sign up for that. And just as a final note, it meant a lot to spend an hour with you all in community tonight. These films move the conversation in every way, no matter how much we have them. I truly feel like we're moving the needle in all those ways. So all that I ask is that you all take this back out into your communities, amplify this wherever you're going tomorrow. Tell people that you watched a great film, that you had a great conversation with some people from all around the world, really, and that we're gonna have another one soon and that they can come and join us. So thanks again to the filmmakers for making this happen, to Yasmeen for having such a great conversation, and to all of you for making this worth our time. Thanks so much. Have a great night. Bye. Nice to see you.
Thank you so
again.
much.
Thank you. All right, I'm closing it down. Bye, everyone.